Hello, my love, and welcome to another episode of Empire Builders with Michelle Hex, your host. I have a couple of things that I need to remind you of before I dive into today's topic because I think I've forgotten to tell you about it for the last couple of weeks. The first thing is I have a brand new complimentary gift that is a mastermind launch guide. If you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you know that masterminds are my thing and that most of my clients have masterminds. Masterminds are amazing because they help you to build monthly recurring revenue, high ticket monthly recurring revenue. They allow you to do your best work. They allow you to go really deep with the work and produce outstanding results. I love everything mastermind. And so this gift is a launch guide, a mastermind launch guide. And you will find a workbook, a masterclass, and a checklist. And it is all free for you to go and download. You just need to go to michellehext.com/launch. And I'll pop it in the show notes as well. And you can go and put yourself through that masterclass. When you complete the masterclass, there is an option for you to purchase a private strategy call with me. It's heavily discounted off my regular rate. And on that call, I'm going to help you to pull together your game plan. So if you go through the masterclass, it's very clear. You know, the steps are very, very clear. But I know that humans have a way of overcomplicating things. And oftentimes you just need that outward perspective to make sure that you're on the right track. So sometimes you might think something is a great idea or it might need to be included, or sometimes you feel like you've got to decide between two things and you can't decide which one. And you're just going to have questions, right? As you go through that masterclass, there's a lot of information in there that you're going to be able to use and implement pretty quickly, but there is no doubt that you're going to have questions as well. And so I'm giving you an opportunity, as I say, at a discounted rate or reduced rate for my private strategy call so we can get on and I can answer those questions for you, help you map out that game plan so you can launch your high ticket mastermind and move into the world of high ticket masterminds. They are life. I love them so much. My clients love them so much. We love the work we get to do. We love the way that our monthly recurring revenue builds every month. And it's just a great way to do business. All right. So what I want to talk with you about today, it's really interesting. Normally I come into these podcasts on a Monday morning and I've got the idea. I've usually had the idea for a few days. I ruminate over it over the weekend, and then I come in and I sit down and it's very clear what I want to talk to you about. And today was just one of those mornings where I was wavering around a million different ideas of the different things that I wanted to talk about. And I couldn't really land on one, I'll be honest. And so I'm just going to pull a rabbit out of a hat today and just speak what's on my heart. And I think we're probably overdue a little bit about for me to talk about my journey. You know, we have been together on this internet, on this podcast since 2020. And some of you, though, are new. You know, with my podcast promotion happening at the moment, I'm getting hundreds of new people coming to this podcast every single day. And I realized that I haven't really spent a lot of time telling you about how I got here and yeah, I guess that journey, right? So let's dive into that today. Let's talk about what that looks like. You know, I always resist doing this sort of stuff because in my mind, it's like people don't want to hear my story. They just want me to give them strategy, or they want me to give them something that they can go and implement, or they want me to give them something that's going to help them think bigger or feel inspired to go and run through walls or whatever, right? And so I always get a bit, do people really want to hear this stuff? But you know what? I'm just going to roll with it today. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And so it might be a little bit of a longer one this time around, but let's just see how we go. I've told this story in various ways a million times over the last few years, and I think it gets shorter and shorter. It's probably losing some of the you know, the nuances. You know, when you tend to tell a story over and over again, it tends to be a little bit more like, what's the word, homogenized as we go. But here we go. All right. So how far do we go back though? This is the thing, right? Okay, let me just think. Okay, I'm going to do the short version of like my life story. So I was born in March 1969. And what's very interesting about my birth is that when my mum was pregnant with me, she was 17. She had been dating my dad, I think, since she was about 13. And she had been told that she wanted to get married. And she was told that she could not marry my dad. I mean, it wasn't a bad bit of advice, but anyway. So she was told she couldn't marry him. And so, in her wisdom, I think the pair of them decided that if she got pregnant, they would have to let her get married. And so my mum got pregnant at 17. And then she thought she had had a miscarriage. And so she thought that she had lost me. And then she realized that she hadn't lost me. It's a little bit kind of blurry for me. But long story short, she went into labor. She was living with her mum and dad and my 4 aunties. So my mum is one of 5 daughters. And so she has gone into labor and nobody knew she was pregnant because they thought she'd lost the baby after, all the drama about being pregnant at 17 or whatever. And so they had to wake my grandparents to take my mum to the hospital to give birth to me. And so she did, obviously. There was a bit of like, what the hell? How can you live in the same house as your child and not know they're pregnant? So I think my mum put on something like 4 kilos when she was pregnant with me. So she was tiny. And so, boom, I come home from the hospital and I live with my nana and my granddad or we called him Pa, and my 4 aunties. So it was a busy house, I imagine. And then within about 6 months of my birth, my mum and dad got married and they moved in together. And within 6 months of that time, the domestic violence started. And that was the story of my life until my mum broke up with my dad, or she left him when I was about 10. And so I have, during that marriage, I have a brother and a sister. I'm the eldest, obviously. And then there is my sister and then my brother. And then my mum ended up with my stepdad, and I had another brother through my stepdad. So I have 4 siblings. And we're, some of us are close, some of us are not close. I moved a long way away from my family when I was 19. So I've never really lived around them for a very long time, catch up at Christmas and things like that. But I really just distanced myself from my family many, many years ago. And so, yeah, and in amongst all of this, so yeah, grow up, blah, 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 there's still chaos, like absolute chaos in my childhood. There was domestic violence, there was sexual abuse. I was abused by an uncle who was married to one of my aunties. And it was a shit show, fought with my mum a lot about everything. And so I was forced to leave school at 14 and I moved out of home when I was barely 16. And I've been on my own ever since. And I have been like making my way in the world ever since. I remember just sitting when I was forced to leave school. I remember just having this moment of looking around me and thinking, we don't have a lot of money. The domestic violence thing there, I'd been a victim of sexual abuse. And it was like, and now I'm going to be uneducated. Like I was really conscious of what this could do to me. I was always ambitious. I used to read a lot and I used to spend a lot of time in my room writing and journaling and reading and just taking myself out of my environment and my imagination and my ability to, just put I love my own company. I always have loved my own company. And so Yeah. So that was kind of the name of the game until I moved out, and then I moved out, and then yeah, it was a bit kind of, I guess, unsettled. I was unsettled until I was around 20, I would say. I was just moving. I took myself back to school. I did a diploma of applied science in natural resource management because I thought that I would uh, be a fisheries and forestry officer. That was kind of my jam at the time. And then I did my pilot's license because I thought I would be a fire bomber as well. And when I took myself back to school, I was 20, I believe. I was 20, yeah. 2021, something like that. And so I took myself back to school, and I was the only person that had not come straight from high school. So everybody else in that course had come straight from high school, and then there was me. And I was female, and there was, I think, one other part-time female in that course. And I wasn't that much older than the people that had come out of high school, but I hadn't been at school for 7 years at that point, 6 or 7 years. And I just committed myself to it. I was living an hour and a half away from my school. So there were often days when I would drive from the farm that I was living on and helping manage. It's such a different life to what I have now. But yeah, I used to, my very first boyfriend managed farms. And so we moved away. He wanted to get away from his family as well. So we moved to South Gippsland, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and then had this 500-acre beautiful farm that we lived on. I loved it. And I got a job at the local pub to make money. And, we're talking 20 years of age, 21, whatever I was. And so I would drive from that farm to school, go to school all day, and then I would drive back and I'd do shifts at the pub. And oftentimes, because I was doing my pilot's license at the same time, so I would leave extra early in the morning. I would drive to the airport, which was about halfway, and then I would have my flying lesson in the morning, and then I would finish the flying lesson. I would go to school. I would spend the day at school, like way out of my depth. Like learning was so hard because I'd been out of school for so long. And then I would drive home and work at the pub. And then on the weekends were when I had a lot of shifts at the pub. And then we would have school holidays come up, and I would be working at the pub, and I would also do work experience at a forestry office or a logging, a government kind of backed logging. Can't even think of what it was. It was like a logging thing, where they build roads and they knock down all the trees, but it's done in an environmental way. Anyway, so I was doing all of that, and that was my life. And I really found myself in those years around that time. I went to the US when I was 20. That's what actually, I went to the US before I went back to school, because when I traveled to the US, I saw 20 states, and I did a lot of camping and a lot of hiking. And I just remember looking at the rangers and the work that they were doing, and I thought, I really want to do that. And so I came back, and that's when I made the decision that I was going to learn how to do that. I was going to go back to school. And it just happened that in my state was the head department of that course. And so, yeah, I flew back. I had a great time in the US. I went on my own. As I say, I went for a while. I saw 20 states. I just had an incredible time. I hiked the Grand Canyon, whitewater rafting, somewhere in Colorado, I think. Anyway, saw a lot of different places. I stayed in the Midwest for a little while with somebody that hooked me up with somebody who, she's like, oh, you can come and stay with me. And she was she was doing criminology, and amazing girl. And I went to college with her a few days and got to do some really cool things like skid testing and radar on an abandoned airstrip in car. It was just so cool. Anyway, I'm getting like, this is going everywhere. But I got back and it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And because I'd left school, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this course by correspondence first. I'll do some subjects by correspondence just to see if I can actually handle it. And so I got my first lesson back, and it was just freaking crosses and red pen all the way through it. Guys, this is back in the day when we used to have to handwrite things and put them in the mailbox and then wait for them to come back. Like, there was no internet back then. This is like, I don't know, 89, something like that, 90. And yeah, so it came back and it was just like, I can't do this. And the boyfriend that I had at the time, we were together for quite a few years, and I credit him to really helping me in so many ways. He was a very flawed human being in some ways, but he definitely supported me in incredible ways. And one of those ways was that when this assignment came back and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get this. And he's like, okay, we're going to do it again. I'm like, I don't like doing anything again. He's like, sit your ass down. We're going to figure this out. And so I redid the assignment. It came back and I got like a B plus or something. And I was so happy. And then once I'd done a few subjects, and it's like, I think I'm going to be good with this, I enrolled to go full time. And I'd enroll, but I didn't know whether I would be accepted. And obviously, it's just like the movies, the envelope arrives one day, and it was like, oh my God, this is either I'm going to be accepted or rejected. And I couldn't open it. And I waited for Russell to get home, and he opened it and he's like, you're in. And I was so excited. And so I went to school. I was exhausted. Just all of the work and all of the driving and the flying and the studying for the flying. I was so exhausted. But I just loved it. And there are things that I found very, very hard. So one of the first subjects that we had to learn was land surveying. So I had to know trigonometry. Well, I didn't get that far. I left school when I was 14. And maths had never been my strong suit. And so I remember sitting in the class one day and just thinking, I can't do this. Like, I'm going to fail. I am not going to be able to do this. And so the class ended. It got to lunchtime. I went and knocked on the door of the teacher or lecturer. And I said, I think I'm going to fail if you don't help me. And he's like, cool, come in. And so he sat me down and he was like, okay, so let's just start from here. Do you understand this? And I'm like, nope. He's like, okay, that's okay. We'll go back a bit further. What about this? Do you understand this? I'm like, no, I don't understand that. And he's like, it's okay. And I'm crying. And he's like, don't worry about it. And so he went back. Oh, always makes me emotional. Oh, okay. So he sat with me and I got it right. Sorry. Okay. Just, some things really just stick with you. These moments in time where somebody has just changed your life, and he was one of them. I can't even remember his name. It's so weird. Anyway, so he sat with me, and every lunchtime for 3 weeks he sat with me, and I got it. And by the time that course was finished, I remember sitting there with my mum at the art centre in Melbourne. We were having our graduation. And my mum she used to call me dumb and stupid. And when I was reading and would fault it, she used to mock me and slap me. And so, yeah, I'd built up this, thing. Hang on. Yeah, so I'd built up this thing around learning. I just felt like I was stupid. And I was sitting in the graduation and they were doing, calling people up on stage. And the head of the department was talking about this person. And I'm like, oh, they sound pretty amazing. And then he started talking about how this person would drive an hour and a half and have a flying lesson and often be changing flat tires on the way to get to class. And yeah, the recognition that they gave me for my efforts, I have to keep pausing. The recognition that they gave me for my efforts was just unbelievable. And it validated something for me. I knew I was ambitious. I knew I was smart if there was something that I wanted to figure out. But I had 2 decades of being told that I wasn't smart enough and I wasn't worthy of going to school. So that was withdrawn from me and things like that. So it really changed everything in me. And I never went on to fly commercially. I never went on to get a job in that field because I found Taekwondo and fell in love with it in the interim. But, the lessons that I gained from putting myself in that environment and just feeling so out of my depth and, having to ask for help when I really needed it because I had to ask myself, do I want this or not? I can walk away. Like, no one's making me do this thing. I can walk away. So I can walk away or I can stay and I can ask for help and I can figure it out. And that's what I did. And it changed everything for me. Even learning how to fly, right? Like principles of flight and things like that. I can look at it now and understand it. But back then it was like I was learning a whole other language. And one of the things about that course is I remember them saying at the very beginning, at the end of this, you're going to have to do a presentation. And it was a significant amount of of our score. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to have to get up and speak in front of these people. So I had hives from the beginning. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I hate speaking. I'm not very good at it. I wasn't even that I wasn't very good at it. I'd never put myself in a position where I had to do it. And so I was just like, I'm just like giving myself anxiety, like it's going out of fashion. I remember as it got closer and closer and closer and closer to the presentation, we didn't have PowerPoints and stuff like that, but I still had to get up and, I think we had a whiteboard or something. And for about, I think the last month at school, during lunch breaks and things like that, sometimes we used to go and kick the footy around on the lawn and things like that. And I had this tree, I would sit under the tree and I would just try to memorize this freaking thing, like as if my life depended on it. And it was just like, I have to get this right. And I just went quiet. And it's one of these things that even today, when I'm going quiet, it just means that I've got my head down, I am leveling up, and I'm just doing what I need to do to manage myself while I go through this level up, right? Anyway, so it came to my turn to do my presentation, and I did it on the principles of flight. And I had diagrams and all the rest of it, and everybody just loved it. I got so much applause and so much praise for this presentation that I did. And I was so proud of myself. And I remember just thinking, oh, who would have thought that I could do this and do this really, really well? And, I look back at that experience and even as I talk about it now, there was so much discomfort from the very first day of me putting myself back to school. And as I say, no one was forcing me to do this. Like, it's not like I had parents that had an expectation. There was none of that. It's not like, there was no expectation set in my world that someone would go back to school and do this. And, I did it. And I was so proud of myself. And my boyfriend at the time, we were together from when I was 16 until I was around 22. And he played a big role in that, just keeping me, focused on what I could be, and I'm forever grateful for all of those experiences. And I look at it now, I look at that experience now, and as uncomfortable as it was, and as, how much of a roller coaster it was, and the stress that I put myself through because I wanted to be perfect and was so scared of failing. And I look at it today and I still put myself in those uncomfortable situations. I still find myself saying at least once a year, why am I doing this? Nobody's making me do this. Like, I'm choosing this. And then I remember, you're choosing this. Like, you're choosing this and you chose it for a reason. So let's get in there and do it. So that was that, right? So that was that up until I was about, 22, 23, 24, something like that. So I'd been back to school, did my pilot's license, blah, blah, blah. And then at 22, turning 23, I found Taekwondo. I had been dating a guy, back in my old hometown because that's where my school was, and I would stay down there a little bit. And he was doing a form of karate, and we dated for like 2 weeks. And he said, "Do you want to come to karate and have a look?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I went, and there was this young girl there. Well, she was probably about my age, and she had a brown belt on, and they were sparring, and it was like full on. I just remember thinking, I have to do this. I absolutely have to do this. And then obviously we broke up, and I wasn't going to that club, but where I was living, I saw that there was a taekwondo school there. It was called Taekwondo. And I went, and it was fine. Like, I was just happy to be doing it. But it just felt slow to me. I just felt like, I've been walking up and down the hall in stance and just blocking or just punching for like 3 weeks now. There's got to be more to this. And I'd look over the side, and there'd be, the higher belts doing all the really cool stuff. And like, I understand that foundations need to be built, but it was like, come on. Anyway, another school opened up in the town, like within a few weeks of me starting at that first school. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go try this other one and see. And it was WTF, World Taekwondo Federation Taekwondo. So the Olympic style Taekwondo. The Olympic style Taekwondo back in the 90s and 2000s, not the sport Taekwondo of today, which don't even start me. But anyway, I fell in love with it. And then I was obsessed. All I wanted to do was Taekwondo. So I started Taekwondo. I was training 3 or 4 times a week. I was working at the pub. I'd finished my schooling at this time. And I just threw myself into Taekwondo. I just really loved it. And then within a very short amount of time, I started competing. It's like, why can't I just be a normal person and just go and do Taekwondo and just do the normal classes, like the regular classes, like everybody else? There's roughly about 3% of any club or organize, each school has about 3% of people who fight. And I had to be in that, didn't I? And so what was once this, I'm learning and this is fun and this is great. And I'm feeling challenged, but I'm enjoying it, was suddenly like every freaking night was fight to the death. And I remember just thinking, I got into this thing to reduce my stress, and I'm more stressed than I've ever been in my life. So I've been putting myself in these situations, and I had my black belt within about 14 months. Usually takes between 3 and 4 years. I was training every day. I was competing. I was training with the state squad. I was training with our Korean head instructor on the weekends. I was training 5 nights a week and 3 mornings a week, and just threw myself into it entirely. And my Taekwondo instructor ended up becoming my husband, then became my ex-husband. He is the father of my children. And I won't go into that too much, but he is not a good person at all. And that's a story for another day. I'm not even going to get into it because it's probably litigious, but he had a little stay somewhere where he wasn't able to have a lot of freedom, and it was well deserved. Let's just say that. So that put me through a lot of stress. It put my kids through a lot of stress. And it was a decade of my life where I was in and out of court and very stressed and trying to be a single mum and be a very good mum and run my Taekwondo school and things like that. So it actually turned out that I had my son, and then we had broken up, and then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So I had my daughter on my own. Had no family around. I had one friend who was so helpful, but I had a Taekwondo school to run and no one to help me. So within a week of giving birth, I was back on the mat teaching, and I had somebody come in and take care of my kids. And so I did it tough for a lot of years. Having a baby on your own is no joke, and doing pregnancy on your own is no joke. And because I was at the front of a Taekwondo school, I was a head instructor. It was my school. And here I am being a role model and wanting to set a really good example. I take my responsibility very seriously. And I believe that if you are a martial arts instructor and you have a black belt around your waist, then it's not just about your skills. You have to lead with integrity. You have to be a certain type of person. And so it just felt like I was letting everybody down when I was, day that I gave birth, I'm there teaching bloody classes with this big belly, and it was just, crazy. Anyway, so had my baby, had my son, and just muddled through, right? It's a decade where it was full of, as I say, going to court. I was in and out of court all the time. I was a witness for the prosecution against my ex-husband. And prior to that, it was family court, just constant family court and he was just constantly trying to put me under so much duress that I would break. And guess what? I didn't. And he's a broken, withering human as we speak. Anyway, enough about that. So it was just a really rough kind of decade, but I still made a lot of progress, right? It was around this time that I wanted to become I found out about personal training. So there was no one doing personal training in my town. So I would drive like 45 minutes where there was like the only personal trainer within like the state. So I would drive there, have some personal training. And I remember thinking, I can do this. And so I became qualified as a personal trainer. And again, we are talking, there was no correspondence. There was no online learning. I would have to, I signed up for this course. So this is, you send the application in the mail with the check, and they deposit the check and then they send you your lessons. It's wild to think about now, right? And so I did that. So I did got qualified as a PT. It was all, handwritten stuff, going backwards and forwards and learning from the books that they gave me and things like that. And then I had to have 40 hours of prac. So there was not very many people that were qualified to sign me off on those 40 hours. And I think Zoe was maybe 8 weeks old at that stage, maybe 10 weeks old. And I was running out of time to get these 40 hours. So I found a gym that was like 90 minutes away. I had a sitter come in and I would express some milk and then I would drive for 90 minutes. And I didn't express. I would feed her and then I would drive 90 minutes and then I would do 10-hour days just to get it done. I wanted to do it in 4 days. And then drive back, and my boobs were like just so full of milk. It was just a nightmare. Like, why I didn't buy a pump, I probably couldn't afford it. And then I'd get home and I did that for 4 days, and it was intense and insane, but I did it. And so then I was able to bring personal training into my dojang. So I had a full-time taekwondo school, and I did a lot of things actually as I think about it. So I brought personal training in, so I set up a little personal training studio. I had my main dojang, and so I did the personal training. But as I talk about that, there's a couple of things that I did while I had that dojang, and one was, remember, what's his name? The guy that did Billy, what's his name? It was like, he was the first guy to do like kickboxing to music, like kickboxercise. You would know Billy Blanks. What was it called? Oh my God, I can't remember. Anyway, I developed something that was a little bit different to that, and I called it Power. And I had a class called Power Kick and I had a class called Power Punch. And one was more kicking focused, the other one was more boxing focused, and it was done to music, but it was very taekwondo driven. And I trademarked it and I registered it. And then I had a videographer come in and we did a demo tape. So there's the VHS tape. I've still got them. And so the VHS tape was like, basically what I was doing was, in the fitness industry, people would get qualified to do, like the Billy Blanks thing or whatever it was. And I knew that people in martial arts schools didn't have the fitness background. They didn't have that knowledge, but I knew it would be a really good addition to martial arts schools if they had a system. And so I developed these classes, and then I had a videographer come in, and I had him record us doing the classes, just like an old, workout video. And so we recorded the different classes. I had a workbook. I had ways to alternate the training so that each it was kind of modularized, and it's like there's 10 warm-ups, so you can choose each of any of these warm-ups, and then the second section of the class and the third section, and so they could have like hundreds of different types of workouts. So I had that, and then I found I wanted to have some equipment to run PT as well as the taekwondo. So I found in the Trading Post, so we're going back years, it was a newspaper. I found in Frankston there was this gym. It was like a complete gym for $5,000. And I'm like, this is pretty good. So I head down there, and it's like scrap metal. It's this guy, this old bodybuilder guy from Frankston who closed his gym down and just threw everything into the shed. Some of it was rusted. It was just like a pile of crap. But I knew what I was looking at, and I kind of took my life into my own hands, and I'm walking through trying to crawl through the shed and figure out what was there. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I know this 12 station, I don't want it, but I know I can sell that for $3. And I just looked at all the different pieces, and I went, okay, cool. And so I negotiated, and I got it for $3,000, I think, from memory. Anyway, so getting it back to the gym was like a process. Like I had people helping me, and we got it back there. And the way my gym was set up, I had the dojo ran the full length of the shed. And then the middle section was broken into 3 sections. There was like a reception, there was like a lounge, closed room, and then there was storage. And then the right-hand side was where the gym went. And so I had room to just dump everything and store everything. And I just took little bits out at a time, and I sanded them, and I painted them, and I reupholstered them. I did it all myself. And I set my gym up. I had everything I needed. And then I cleaned up that other piece of equipment that had like 12 different gym stations on it. It was a universal multi-station. If you're in fitness, you'll know what that was. And I sold it for 3,000 or 5,000, something like that. So I got my money back. And then I set up my gym. And the other thing that I did is something that was going around at the time was like body wraps to help people lose centimeters. It's so full of shit. But anyway, it's like, oh, yeah, this looks good. And so I bought this kit, and I learned how to do it. And you basically paint this freaking clay on, and then you wrap bandages a certain way around people, and then you put them in a sauna suit, and then you, when they've been done for like an hour or whatever, they come out. Then you measure them again. It's like, oh, you've lost 26 centimeters or whatever. Anyway, that was like a low point, because I'm there, and I remember this day standing there, and there's this guy that came in for the body wrap, and I'm like, oh no. So he's standing there in his jocks, and I've got to paint like his whole body, and there was movement at the station, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm selling my soul. Anyway, those body wraps, I stopped just like no men, or I would have someone there with me at the gym just in case, something happened. Nothing happened that day, but it was just like, well, no, I don't need this in my life. But the body wraps that I was doing, I think each wrap cost me $12, and it was $150 a wrap. So I remember it's like, I've only got to do 10 of these a month, and that will pay my rent, and then everything else is golden. And so that's what I did, wrapping people in this bloody thing, and that was paying my rent. And then the rest was like revenue coming in. So I had personal training revenue, I had the body wrap revenue, I had the taekwondo school revenue, and it was amazing. I've always been able to find ways to make money. And so I did that for a while. And then what did I do after that? life and business coaching became a thing. It wasn't a thing, right? But suddenly it was a thing. And it's like, well, I think I'd be good at that. So I'm going to go get qualified at that. And so like we fast forward a little bit, and then on one side of the street I'd moved into a different taekwondo school facility. I'd stopped doing everything else and I was just doing the taekwondo by that stage. And on one side of the street I had my taekwondo school. On the other side of the street I had my office for my coaching. And it was an office that was split in two. And so I renovated it. I did a really good job. Like I painted it, I bought furniture, like I did it all myself. And I set it up beautifully. And then I sublet the second office, and that covered my rent. It covered the entire rent and a little bit more. And I was like, yeah. So I didn't even pay for my office. And it was really cool. So I started doing my coaching. And then around this time, I launched my online fitness program, and just kept following my nose. And then I moved. I've had other taekwondo schools over the years. This is getting long, so I've got to wrap it up. So I've had different taekwondo schools over the years, different online fitness businesses. And then we get to about 2014, and I realized that I'm kind of done with being on the mat and teaching classes, even though I loved it so much. I loved being on the mat. I loved instructing. I'm very good at it. I produce very good students, and I create a culture in the martial arts space that I still can't find for myself today. And it's just incredible. But getting there and teaching on the mat, the way my latest school was women only. It was the best school I'd ever had. I was teaching, I think, 4 nights a week from about 4:30 till about 8:30, and that was it, right? Sometimes it was twice a week, depending on if I had a beginner program running or not. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it was either 2 or 4 nights a week. And I was doing pretty well. Getting to the class and being on the mat and running the classes, absolutely loved it. But all day, I'm working in my online business. I'm coaching people. I'm really thriving in that space. And to have to shift gears and to change hats and then go and teach, it was taking too much effort. And I just remember thinking, I think I'm done with this. I don't want to be done. I love it. I'm going to miss it very, very much. But I'm ready to just be a student now and to focus on my business. And, within a very short amount of time, I'd launched my first high-ticket mastermind. And that was 2014. I had a $25,000 mastermind with tax. It was about 27.5. And I sold 8 spots on that program and did 200K. I'd locked in MRR for the entire year by, I think it was the first week of February. And that's when I realized I'm onto something. And so I've been running masterminds and that type of thing ever since. Yeah, I feel like this has got to be, like, I need to do a part 2 because that was really a lot of the early days. But what I want you to take away from this, I guess, is that there has been a lot of adversity in my life, and I don't really go around thinking that. It's not like I go around thinking my life was so hard and, oh my God, I had so much go wrong. I don't really think like that. But as I talk about it, I'm reminded, fuck, you're still here and you're still more enthusiastic than you've ever been in your life about everything that you do. It's like, it's pretty crazy and a testament to my nature, I think. Like, I do have a very optimistic nature. I'm a naturally happy person. I am a naturally optimistic person, and it's really served me well. And those trying times, those very challenging times, I've had some really rough times. And especially, around those times, like having a baby on my own and the financial pressure that I was under without support from their dad, and all of that stuff was really, really hard. And so when I look at business now, there are highs and lows, there are ups and downs, right? Last year wasn't a great year for me. I was going through stuff with my diagnosis and just wasn't a great year. And I can't remember the time before that I had a bad year. Like I might have had a bad month here and there. And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about like emotionally, focus wise, feeling out of alignment, all those things. But I knew I would get back to it, and I just stopped forcing it at some point, and that's when things started to turn around. But what I want you to take from today is that, a lot of people will see someone with a lot of success, and they think that, they were born that way, or they had a lot of support growing up. And, if you've had a childhood and, situations like I've had going through my life, you'll know that we're behind the eight ball from the beginning, right? I mean, it gives us, there's two schools of thought, right? I've worked with clients who have had a lot of support, supportive parents, then they've got a supportive husband, and there's no need for them to have a business. They just kind of want it. And they're so consumed with getting things wrong that they never actually make a move. They're so scared of failure that they never make a move, and they're paralyzed. And I have a really hard time working with people like that. And then there are people like us who are, it's like, we've got nothing to lose. Like, what have we got to lose? And yeah, we might fail, but so what, right? And so we have an edge that other people don't have. And we have to really frame it that way, because what choice do we have, right? I've been watching a lot of Formula One, and I love the F1 show, where it's behind the scenes. It's on Netflix. I don't know what it's called. And you look at those kids, those boys, and they are amazing. But it's like their dads have been, and their parents have been there, like from the very beginning, like, my child is going to be great. My child is going to be great. And there's been a lot of expectation. You can see some of them, the weight of expectation is very, very heavy. But most of them have had so much support from day one. They've had the resources, they've had the support, they've had, the parents have put them in these situations where they have been noticed, right? And then obviously they have to be good at what they do, and I'm not taking anything away from them. But someone that doesn't have a cent, someone that doesn't have a supportive parent, someone that doesn't have the resources, put them in the same, give them the same set of skills, and the people that are supported and have the resources, especially in a sport like that, they're going to get the opportunities, right? And we have to make our own. And we do. And we're resilient, and we're tough, and we're agile, and all of those things, but we had to be. And so we can talk about how hard it's been, and just, I went through a phase last year where I was listening to a few different speakers, and they were, in the multi-billionaires and millionaires and billionaires, and companies that they start. And if they don't do like 100 million in the first 12 months, it's like they cut it loose and they sell it and they acquire something else. And these are people, they're mostly men actually, and they're talking about this, they're making their first millions when they're 19 and 20. And then they talk about their parents. And I remember just thinking, oh, I wish I had parents that just mentally prepared me. You will be a billionaire. Like, you will be a billionaire. There's just, they don't question it, right? They're just like, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to make this happen? And I just remember getting like really irritated about that. And like, life can be really different. If I would be a lot further ahead than I am now, if I had this support, having the little pity party for a minute. And then I was walking one day and I realized, you know what? You can actually go back and you can install that yourself. You can install those beliefs yourself. You can erase those shitty beliefs and you can go back and install them. And I have done a lot of work. I've come a long way, right? Somebody, we didn't have any money. I was not supposed to go anywhere. And so I look at all of the limiting beliefs that I've overcome and just have this unwavering belief in myself, because as I say, I've put myself in a lot of very challenging positions and I've prevailed. And so I've gained evidence over the years that I can do anything I put my mind to, but my limits are still there, right? It's like, instead of thinking millions, why aren't I thinking billions? There have never been any more billionaires. It doesn't mean I have to coach my way to being a billionaire. I can invest in companies and I can do things like that. And so that's the path that I'm on right now. It's like, well, why are we just stopping at millions? Why are we not thinking billions? And it's like, because nobody ever taught me to think that way. And so I'm exposing myself to people who are in that realm because I want to make that normal. I want to make that the expectation. I have to put myself in places and positions and rooms where the expectations are higher because, no one set them for me growing up. I set them for myself, but I'm very conscious and very aware that there are limits. And those limits are a byproduct of the way that I grew up. And we all have them, right? And you might have had the best parents in the world and had a lot of support, and you might still have those limiting beliefs. We all have our own version of it. But just know that it's always, what looks like elegant success at the front is sometimes very ugly in the back, right? Sometimes it's very ugly and you don't see the fight that it took. You don't see the inner work that had to be done, the overcoming that had to be achieved, to get there. And if we take emotion out of it and we go, right, we're just, to be successful, there's this formula and you just do that. And men can do that mostly very, very well. And there are people that can do that. But for most women that I've met, the emotion is everything, right? And the background that we bring, the identity that we bring into our business is always going to be our limiting factor, right? And so that's why we need people in our world who can see what we can't see, who can set those higher expectations for us. Because I know if you are listening to a podcast like that, it doesn't matter what expectation I set you, you will rise to it because that's just who you are. That's just who you are. And so yeah, I guess what I want to say, I'm trying to wrap it up and I just keep going off on tangents. At the end of the day, your identity, I think this is it, your identity is always going to be the limiting factor for you. And we cannot on our own see what we are capable of because we are always limited by circumstances that we've been raised in and have continued to live in. But it doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter how hard life has been, how challenging things are. If somebody like me who has grown up in, as I say, domestic violence and poverty and sexual abuse, left school at 14, left home at 16, just with no guidance at all. If someone like me can figure it out and live a really good life, challenges, of course, there are always going to be challenges, but I created a life that feels amazing to me. And I think because of the way that I have, the circumstances of my life, business is my joy because it's so easy for me. It is so simple for me. It's light for me. It's fun for me. It's like a big puzzle that I get to solve, for my clients and things like that. And I really enjoy it. I love it. I love it so much. And for me, business has been the thing that has brought me the greatest amount of joy. And I'm aware that I last year had, some emotional setbacks. There's no other way of saying it. And I had to reconfigure my identity. I didn't actually have to, but I had to figure out that I didn't have to when I found out about my diagnosis. And it was like, oh my God, this is not how I see myself. So what then? Like, what has to change? I remember thinking before I got, when I was pregnant, I'm like, well, how am I going to dress? How am I going to behave? How am I going to be different as a mum than before? And I'm no different, right? And it was the same with the diagnosis. I'm no different. My energy levels aren't what they used to be, but I'm doing really well at the moment. And so I've found a way to roll with it and work with it and rest when I need to and things like that. But I had to go through a bit of an identity shift. And it was like I had to shake the tree And anything that was a distraction, anything that felt precarious, anything that felt like it didn't belong went. And it helped me to do what I have been wanting to do but resisting doing for a long time, and that is have one product and focus on making it the best product, and then having one way of moving people into that, or one or two ways of moving people into that product that feel amazing. And so all of those ducks are in a row now. The mastermind is growing, my MRR is growing, my client's MRR is growing, and it's a good time. And it's easy now. So I have resisted creating too much time freedom in my life because I didn't really know what to do with it. Because with my diagnosis, I can't just go to the gym all day, every day, and then go for a run and then go and find a class to do or something, because I don't have the same energy reserves that I used to have. And so it was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what do people do? If I'm not training and I'm not working, what do I do? And so I had to get a lot of clarity around what I would do in my downtime without feeling like I had to break something and fix it again. And I'm on the other side of that. I can't even believe that one of my thought patterns was, what am I going to do when I don't have anything to do? Like, it was just used to freak me out because I like to be busy. And I'm on the other side of it, and it feels amazing. And I created this. You know, they talk about self-made, and then people are like, you know, well, nobody's really self-made because, and it's like, I freaking am. You know, I am. And most of my clients are too. Yeah, you get mentoring along the way and you have different things that come along. But at the end of the day, it's all you, boo. You are doing the hard yards, and go out there and create something amazing. And yeah, that's the end of the podcast. It's really hard to know how to end something like this. I feel like we really just did the part A, and there's probably B, C, D, and E, but let's just leave it there. That was my early years. It was a shit show. Absolutely. I learned a lot. It was hell on wheels, honestly, but it makes everything else feel so easy now. I'm so grateful for what I've created. I'm grateful for my clients. I'm grateful for the life that I get to live, and it feels pretty damn amazing. Anyway, before I go, my mastermind is open until Friday, then the doors are closing. So if you would like to come and spend a year with me figuring out how we are going to build a legacy brand for you, one offer, just one, and make it your best work yet, so that you become known for that thing, and we just take it all the way. So we figure out this one offer. It's usually a mastermind product, and then we take it all the way. And we develop systems around your sales and marketing so that you're not on the content creation treadmill, and you are not feeling like you're reinventing the wheel every month. We aren't reinventing the wheel every month. And every sale we make adds to our MRR for between 6 and 12 months. If you've got a mastermind that runs for 12 months, which is my recommendation, then every sale you make is 12 months of revenue. It's the best thing you'll ever do. It's the best decision you'll ever make if you work with this model. Anyway, that is it. Oh my God. It feels like it was a little bit messy. Next week, I'm going to talk about those of you who are life coaches who feel like you don't know how to price and package, because business coaches, we have a very clear ROI, right? Invest in this thing, make this much. When you're a life coach, it's not as easy to create a tangible ROI, but there's no reason why you can't create super high ticket offers that are very, very compelling. So I'm going to talk about how you do that next week. As I say, Mastermind is closing. Go get the guide. The guide is michellehex.com/launch. Put yourself through that, jump on the call, and then that's a way to get a good taste of how I work and if we're a good fit or not. And if you decide that you do that call and you're like, oh, I want to join the mastermind, I credit you the cost of that call to the mastermind. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you next week. And I'm probably going to have overshare hangover, but that's okay. That's okay. We can do hard things. See you next week.